everyone, and welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular meeting for September 3rd, 2019. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And first order of business is I would ask that everybody either turn off or mute your cell phone or other electronic devices. And I will ask Trustee Kripe to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Item 3, quorum check. Rob, you want to check quorum?
Certainly. September 10th study session, and I had you being away. Anybody else for the 10th?
I am not here.
Okay, John. And then September 17th, regular meeting? All good? And then October 1. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, item number 4, public comment. This is the time of the evening where anybody who wishes to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda, you're welcome to come on up to the microphone, tell us who you are, and share your thoughts with us. Would anybody like to address council this evening on anything that is not on the agenda? Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Greer Braun. My husband Arthur and I have lived on Bell Lane in Winnetka for 24 years. And what I'd like to speak to this evening is about the illumination or lack thereof on Tower Road. Okay, the only way to access Bell Lane, by the way, is from Tower Road. There's no other access. And one of the concerns that we've noticed on our street is the huge increase in the amount of traffic on Tower Road over this 24-year period. In actuality, I would say there's been a huge increase in the last 12 months, and especially heavy truck traffic. So one of the things that concerns us very much is the lack of illumination from the area that's approximately from Forest Way on the west to Green Bay Road on the east. The street, as you may know, is fairly narrow. And initially, when there's not many cars, it's fine, okay? But when there's a huge amount of traffic, that becomes an issue. The lighting on Tower Road as it exists today, I would call quaint, to be polite about the whole thing, okay? And so what I'm asking for the council to consider to improve the striping on the street. Now, the street was under construction 3 years ago when there was new sewers, so it's actually in very good condition, but the striping that took place at the time has begun to wear. And I am requesting that the center stripes, the yellow-orange center stripes, also have those reflectors, I guess is what the proper word is, and that the sides of the street next to the curb be painted white. And I think that this would do a tremendous change to the need and prevent accidents. That's one of the main reasons that I'm here this evening. Now, we happen to have a home in Door County, Wisconsin, and the reason why I'm bringing that up is in northern Wisconsin, the state and the counties are very, very conscious of this. And when you go in the rural areas, they are striped that way. And you can go for a long distance at night without any homes or any towns and be able to find your way quite easily. So I'm hoping that this is a fairly inexpensive way of solving the problem rather than taking down all the lights and things of this nature. I would ask or favor you, if you don't ordinarily drive down Tower Road, I would appreciate if you could go during the rush hours in the morning and in the evening, and then go after it gets dark. And once it gets dark, it's really dark. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greer. You know, after we talked about it at a Cells that one day, I did mention it to Steve Saunders, but I didn't understand you were interested in the plowables. That's what they call those little reflectors. They call them plowables. But I didn't realize that was part of the conversation.
The side streets off Tower Road that are west of Hibbard have no public lighting off Tower Road.
Right.
Do not have any public lighting on Bell Lane at all.
Right.
Okay.
But I did mention it to him, and and I have to be honest with you, it kind of got lost in the conversation.
Certainly.
But
Again,
I wish he was here this evening because that
this
would
is-
re-energize the conversation.
this is a safety issue now because of the huge amount of traffic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Arthur?
My name is Arthur Brown, and I'm at 850 Bell Lane. The reason that I come here to the council tonight is something very significant. I came to say thank you. The paramedics, about 12 days ago, took me to the Evanston Hospital. They were wonderful, excellent, I can't tell you. They brought me from the second floor around very difficult stairs. To this day, I can't tell how they did it. My wife says that they had like a papoose that they got me in and got me down, put me in an ambulance. I don't remember anything until I was at Evanston Hospital. It was a very, very serious, very significant, and required, very quick response. So the fact that they got back within maybe less than 5 minutes was excellent. The care was unbelievable. So I just want the village, and I don't know who the paramedics are. I wish I knew to thank them personally, but I really think that they should take credit for an excellent, excellent service. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Arthur. I'm glad to see you're healthy. All right, anybody else like to address council on items not on the agenda? Come on up, Eli.
Good evening, thank you. Elisha Gray, 1125 Spruce Street, about 40-year resident of Winnetka. I just wanted to alert the council that they will be receiving a letter requesting that the Village of Winnetka and the Park District of Winnetka co-commission a long-range plan for the development and maintenance of the Green Bay Trail. It is a highly used but under-managed asset of the community, and I think that it would benefit the community and ourselves to have a plan for natural and engineered stewardship. So look forward to receiving that letter and considering it. Thanks.
Thanks, Eli, and thanks for championing that cause. It's well worth it. Would anybody else like to address council? Seeing none, I will close public comment, and we will move forward with reports. Trustee reports. We'll start with Trustee Wedner.
I did have a forestry meeting, but there wasn't really anything to report on from it, so apologies.
But you went.
I did.
Okay. So you get a gold star for attendance. Bob? No report? John?
I attended the Plan Commission last week. They're still working on, things that they feel are important for the new comprehensive plan. They've got some proposals out and back on the comprehensive plan consultant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think within the next couple of weeks, we've got interviews with them, and we'll eventually make it up to council.
Super. Andy?
Just a quick stormwater update. So we've got the IGA in place with New Trier and the Forest Preserve that leaves Winnetka Public Schools and the Winnetka Park District. And I think it's just important everybody know that we are meeting with them frequently and regularly. Where we're at right now is, in terms of implementing the overall solution, working with those two entities so that they can make sure that their long-term needs on the sites where we're looking at stormwater detention are met while we stay within the budget that we've set for ourselves. And I just want to thank both the school district and the park district. They've been great partners, but there's been a lot of creativity. They've identified a lot of opportunities for us to save money, but we're just trying to close that last gap. I'm hopeful that within a month, I'll just put that out there, a month, that we'll be floating some intergovernmental agreements, and those will be the final linchpins to what I think is going to be an exceptional example of intergovernmental cooperation.
Great. Thanks, Andy. Jack?
Two Saturdays ago,
Microphone.
I sat in for Penny at the farmer's market, and I had a lot of interaction. A lot of interaction with people who came through, and one particular resident came through. His name is Chris and his wife, and they live at the corner of Glendale and Cherry Street, and had huge compliments for the village in terms of a permit issue. He had said that he had been fixing stormwater or a pooling problem on his property, and his contractor had done the work but hadn't gotten the right permit, so the village stopped him, came out and said, hey, you can't do that, you got the wrong permit. The next day, his contractor went in and walked out the door with the permit, and he said it was unbelievable. It was so fast. Everybody was so nice and so helpful. He wanted to make sure that I, told the village that they had done an excellent job on that. So, so when people say the permitting thing's slow, it actually can work really, really fast. So,
Great, well, thanks, Jack. Village Attorney?
Nothing to report, and Village Attorney Peter Friedman has passed on the same sentiment.
Thank you. Village Manager?
No report this evening.
And Village President, I have no report this evening. So we'll move up to item number 6, approval of the agenda. Okay, first off, I've removed the Village Green flag request from the consent agenda for discussion immediately after we deal with the consent agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove any other item from the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, consent agenda. The village clerk will read the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Approval of the village council meeting minutes for August 20th, 2019, regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated August 16th through the 29th, 2019, in the amount of $1,279,982.97, and resolution number R72, 2019, amended GIS consortium member agreement for adoption.
Great, thanks, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Wedner?
Aye.
Trustee Kripe?
Aye.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn? Trustee Caladarchi?
Motion carries, thank you. Moving on, item number 8, the Village Green flag request. I'll let our village manager, Rob, give an overview on that particular item.
For several years, we have had local families take the initiative of planting flags on the village green in remembrance of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And tonight we have the Kripe family who's here to carry on that tradition. So if they would like to join us.
Guys, why don't you step on up? Yeah, come on up introduce yourselves, and give people your address. It's what we do.
We all know where you live.
My name is Charlie Kripe. We live at 548 Maple Street. I'm Henry Kripe, and
I'm William Kripe. I'm Julia Kripe.
we would love if anyone could join us at 3:30 on September 10th in planting the flags in remembrance of the victims of 9/11 and removing them at sunset on the 11th.
Thanks. And thank you so much for doing that. That's really it's become a great tradition in our community. I'd like to open the microphone. Would anybody like to offer any other public comment or statement regarding the flags? Seeing none, I'll bring it up here to Village Council. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add to that? Seeing none, may I have a motion to permit 2,977 American flags to be placed on the village green on the night of September 10th and to be removed on the evening of September 11th?
So moved.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries, and everybody in the community is welcome to join and stick a few flags in the ground. Please bring your cordless drills along because sometimes the ground is hard and they don't go in so easy. Okay. Moving along, item number 9, ordinances and resolutions. Ordinance number MC 8/2019, submission and approval of plats of subdivision for planned developments. The village staff has identified some technical amendments to the village code to clarify that the new Plan Development Commission not only has the authority to review the plan development application, but also the associated plats of subdivision that typically accompany those. Here to review is Community Development Director David Schoen. David?
I have nothing more to add. It's a housekeeping item to clarify a couple of other ordinances, so I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back up. Can I have a motion? What am I doing here? May I have a motion to introduce ordinance number MC 8, 2019?
So moved.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, ordinance number M12, 2019, repealing ordinance number M21, 2018. This is up for introduction and adoption. Do we have to waive it?
Yes, there would be.
Okay, we could waive
We could waive intro. It's
Okay.
been noticed to have that option.
Gotcha. Based on recommendations from the 2017 water rate study, which I might add, by the way, was a scintillating multiple evening exercise. Last December, the council approved $1 million loan to help fund the water main replacement program. Based on the favorable performance of the water fund through the end of 2018, staff believes reliance on a loan is no longer necessary. And here to review this is Finance Director Tim Sloth. Tim?
Good evening. The 2017 water rate study recommended a 100-year replacement cycle for water mains, which would require an additional funding of about $2.5 million each year for this program. And as part of that program, the study called for an issuance of $1 million in debt financing, and staff identified the IEPA, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, as a cost-effective approach to achieve that funding, to get to as a seed program, seed money for the program. So the issuance of the debt was for a series of projects, which is broken down into two phases, for water main at Westmore Road and Mount Pleasant, and phase 2, which was for Warwick Road, Merrill Street, and Gage Street. With the rejection of the bid for phase 1, staff, we revisited the water rate study and performed an analysis comparing projections in the study to actual results through the end of the year 2018. The analysis showed that the water fund has performed favorably compared to the study, and that reliance on the IEPA loan is no longer necessary. The current favorable position in the water fund provides for a 4-year payback to the general fund versus a 20-year payback for the IEPA loan. So if you have any additional questions, there's more detailed information within your packet.
Great. Well, thank you, Tim. Anybody have any questions up here?
I guess my only question, Tim, is on the, so we've had 3 years of favorable, fairly significant favorable expense relative to budget. Is there anything about sort of structurally on how the water operation is working that might suggest that we overestimated, going forward, what the cost structure might be, what we might, because this is what's driving the increase in water rates. And if there's something that is structurally going on with the overhead to our favor, should we be readdressing that a little bit to see if we can soften some of these increases on the water rates?
At this point, I mean, so to your question, we are at about $1.8 million of a favorable variance compared to where the study said we would be at December 31st, 2018. And this was due partly to capital expenditures coming in less than planned. That represents about 1/3 of it. And then 2/3 is related to operating expenses coming in less. So part of that is due to, there isn't kind of a single identifiable cost in the operating expenses. It's not like we've seen certain programs that we decided not to do, which is why we came in budget. It's kind of spread all over a little bit. So the study, does show, over the 3 years, in the 3rd year, we use about $100,000 more a year than what we actually budgeted. So it is tracking a little bit ahead, but overall we need to get to a $2.5 million, annual revenue to get to a 100-year replacement cycle. So in 2020 we're at about $1 million. So we still got quite a bit of way to go to ramp up to that point, where it would be at a point where we could, stabilize the rates.
Okay, I mean, I'm not asking to reopen that study. However, if this is our first several year out of the gate result, it would suggest we should probably take a look, I would think, come budget time or something, as to whether any of this is, you know, just sort of a permanent, you know, budget advantage, I guess,
Sure.
to the village, that we could maybe look at that relative to the rate structure.
Sure. So the way, the other aspect of the rate study was, Bob, to your point, look at it each year and determine whether the rate adjustment was still in line with where our targeted goals would be. But it isn't an automatic each year. Each year it has to be looked at. You have to look at how revenues are performing, how the expenditures are coming in on operating and capital. One item on the revenue side is that the Northfield wholesale contract reset, and that has helped us as well. But given the amount of water main that we need to replace and the age of the system, that's what we're ramping up towards. That's the goal, because, you know, as you can see in those studies, there was no way we could keep up with it, given the age of the system.
Right, no, there's no question the rates have to, you know, move higher over time.
Right, but it isn't a given. Each year it's going to be reviewed, and
Okay.
we'll get into more detail in the budget.
Right.
Sure.
It might also give us an opportunity, and this is obviously a budget conversation, but it might give us an opportunity to actually accelerate some of the replacement and move things up quicker and get it done quicker, and get on that 100-year cycle a little sooner, too.
And the other direction was to find those economies of scale by combining it with the road program. So that's part of our look each year, and then the next 3 or 4 years out is how can we sync these up for greater economies on the projects.
I mean, this is obviously a nice position to vote on, you know.
We didn't expect to be here.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions for?
Just Tim, on the IEPA loan, your memo was indicating that it was just too cumbersome and too difficult to work through, and it would end up being off-cycle for our budget. Is that a problem with their program, or is it intended to be that way so that you get the money a year later than you expect?
It's mostly due to cycle time. The state program's July 1st fiscal year, whereas we're December 31st. So timing up our budget cycle with their timeline and getting that kind of synced up, that was a big challenge. So by the time we got the go-ahead from IEPA to go out for bid, it was already in the spring, February, March, whereas we bid the rest of our road program going back into December, January. So that kind of late cycle time, that's part of what why the bid came in so high. And then we ended up rejecting the bid. And then, you know, when the audit results came in, we reanalyzed where we were compared to the study, and that's where we got to this recommendation. But it is, you know, it's a state program, and it is administratively burdensome, but that was, you know, one aspect of this recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, would anybody in the audience like to speak or ask questions on this particular item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment on this, and I'll bring it back up here. Any last thoughts, comments?
It's a good position to be in.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Better than the alternative.
You may have a couple hundred feet of pipe that break sooner than you think, and you've got the cushion, so.
And kudos to Tim and Brian for recognizing that they didn't have to go out and acquire additional debt, and took the initiative to bring it forward rather than just going ahead and doing what we originally authorized. So thank you. Okay, if we're waiving introduction, let's just try it. May I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M12, 2019?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Trustee Wedner?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Carries.
Great, the motion carries unanimously, so we can go ahead and ask for a motion to adopt ordinance number M12, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Wedner?
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. Okay, item number C, ordinance number M14, 2019, 901 to 905 Green Bay Road, Jeannie Balsam Interior Special Use Permit. Tonight, the council will discuss a request to expand an existing interior design business into a first-floor location in the Commercial Overlay District. The Plan Commission recommends in favor of granting this request. Village staff is proposing that a condition regulating the display windows be placed in the approval ordinance. Community Development Director David Schoen is here to review.
Yes, so just briefly to remind everyone where we're talking, it's in the Hubbardwood Business District. It's located on Green Bay Road, excuse me, on the east side of Green Bay Road between Tower and Gage. The property is in the overlay district. The applicant is looking to move from the second floor to the first floor commercial space in the building that's shown here on the slide. The applicant presented a floor plan for the space showing a reception area on the north end along the street. In the center is a design center, and then along the southern portion, in the center are workstations where employees will work, and then on the far south end is a design center. The applicant plans to have displays of windows with different items in them, and it can elaborate on that a little in a moment. She currently has 5 employees, 2 full-time, 3 part-time, and she typically has 2 to 4 client meetings a week in the studio, with a majority of her meetings off-site. As President Rintz indicated, the Plan Commission recommended in favor 5-2. Those in favor felt the business was consistent with the design-related businesses in the district, and so they thought it was appropriate, and that the applicant demonstrated she is a contributing business owner to the district and their efforts to promote the district. Those opposed expressed concerns that it was another professional office, and that would be chipping away at the overlay district. Also, as President Rintz indicated, we did include a condition regarding having display windows and other items comparable to retail uses. As you may recall, with the overlay discussion, the council had some discussion about how do we maintain active windows. And the applicant had provided a narrative, which we've attached to the ordinance, describing how the different windows could be used. One would be for the display of design schemes or inspirations, materials. Another window would basically people being able to see and people working in the workspace. A number of people have expressed with Robbins Architecture and that display window in terms of people being able to see architects and designers working as a desirable feature. And then the other area is kind of their living room or reception area where they'd also have meetings. So there would be, again, an opportunity as people walk by to see people interacting in that space. So we've added a condition in the ordinance generally summarizing the idea she has regarding how these windows would interact along the street. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll bring it up here first. Any questions for David? Is the applicant here? Bob, turn your microphone on.
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Why don't you come on up and tell us a little bit about what you want to do? You're not going to get off that easy.
Well, I thought I would give you a little bit of background, and I'm more properly prepared to be bullet pointed. So to give you a little bit of background, my name is Jeannie Balsam. I moved to Winnetka 21 years ago, and I established my firm, or maybe 22 years ago. I established my firm in Winnetka 20 years ago. I've actually been in my existing space upstairs for 8 of those years. I have a business degree, a marketing degree from Indiana Kelley School of Business. I have an MBA from Loyola Chicago, and I worked for 10 years in the corporate arena at Hyatt Hotels, Anderson Consulting, Accenture, and SBC Ameritech. prior to finding what I was personally gifted in and passionate about, which is interior design. That was very important to me, and I did those things simultaneously because I knew I wanted a career, and I had the birth of my first daughter, so that worked well for me. I want you to know that aside from just being in Winnetka, I want to enlighten you a little bit into the fact that I am a leader in the design community in Chicago and actually in the nation. I'm a member of the Interior Design Peer Alliance. I'm a member of the Chicago Design Alliance, and I was recently nominated and accepted into the Leaders of Design Council, which comprises the nation's top interior designers, architects, and landscape architects. And we meet both locally, regionally, and we meet internationally each year for a spring summit. My business continues to grow and evolve, and I need a larger space. It actually happened that my lease was up for renewal, and I explained, who you'll meet, to my landlords that I loved being where I was and everything, but I was hoping that they would have a larger space for me. And they said, incidentally, the women below are going to retire after, I think, 22 or 24 some years right below. So I looked at the space a bit and realized it's a perfect fit for the growth and the design needs that my firm is at now for like its next evolution and chapter. With, in particular, my kids being grown and different things like that. Personally and professionally, I want my business to grow and evolve. I have, just to let you know, I have looked at the other available spaces in the Hubbard Woods Design District, and the way in which they lay out, which is a lot more like front to back, does not work, honestly, from a floor space ratio situation. If you could imagine just like a home, it just doesn't work in that we would spend a lot of the square feet in like traffic patterns versus going this way, right to left. So a Tree Street house versus like one that's 100 wide. So I want you to know that I'm extremely committed to this community, and some more specific examples and more current examples that I will give you is that this year in particular, I got on the board of the Winnetka Music Festival, and I was on the band host committee. And although I was on that committee, I realized that they needed help with the VIP lounge. And within weeks, I facilitated all the VIP lounge furniture through my contacts, complimentary to them. And they did not have to use any of the funds that they had specifically had, like letters of agreement or whatever, where they would have had to spend money to have that lounge furniture. I also sponsored all the VIP bags personally from my business, and I promoted it with really fun personal swag bags that went out to all my top clients in all the communities. So Glenview, Winnetka, Wilmette, Kenilworth, anyone who remotely I thought would be attracted to come to the music festival. And I did this to support the festival and promote it, and I also did that through all my social media channels as well. And that's personally because I think that's one of the most remarkable things. That and the Hubbard Woods Park have been two of the most remarkable changes in the 21 years that I've been here in regards to the vibrancy of the community and what the community offered me as a young 20-something coming with no kids, no dog, and all of that, and then what they're offering the people and my clients coming from the city, I think is remarkable. The other part that I wanted to suggest, and that's why I brought up my background in business and in marketing, I think 24/7 about business and marketing and design, aside from raising my kids and my marriage and my faith, I guess. But so I just want you to know that I am personally extremely committed to the Hubbard Woods Design District. I was only able to actually move my business out of my home because the downturn in the economy happened and people needed like anyone to rent. And so there were these different rental signs, and so I went around because I realized I couldn't have 4 employees in my house anymore with my kids. It was just like I needed a separation between church and state. And for my kids to not feel like I was choosing my career over them, we needed to separate the things. So if the downturn hadn't happened, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to like make that leap. But within that part, I have been there for, I would say, probably 8 of the toughest years. I mean, not pretty empty for a lot of that, and really just staying committed to that community. And also Sacred Heart, I was a big part of the Sacred Heart community, I still am. I sent my kids through there for 16 years, and that's actually why I picked that block, so that my kids could come after school and see me, and still have that connection. So I want you to know that I was the one who came up with an idea to rename the district the Hubbard Woods Design and Dine District, because I think it better reflects our great energy here with the new dining establishments and that amazing park. I also personally spearheaded food trucks for our First Fridays events. So I kept trying to explain, we need more things to be younger, hipper, kind of dynamic, and things going on. So I personally spearheaded that, even though I'm not specifically a retail or a street level person for the First Friday events. I'm on the committee, and I made that a reality with the coordination of the park district, the police, the permitting. I mean, I think there's like 6 more departments that we all got together to make that happen. And I'm also personally responsible for securing all the food trucks each Friday. So those are just examples that I want you to know that it goes way beyond just my business in regards to my commitment to Winnetka and the community. With my presence on the first floor, as you can imagine, I continue to have even more dynamic ideas to build community activity and foot traffic. I did receive I received a lot of letters, but I wanted you to know in particular that 20 of those letters of support were from residents of the community, many of which are my clients and have been my clients over the past 20 years. And then more recently, I didn't want to ask too much of my fellow merchants, so I just asked for their support within the block period, and I received over a dozen letters of support from those specific retailers in that 3-block area that I have synergies with and that I develop business for from my clients. I did want you to know that I've reviewed it and I meet the criteria for the 11 village standards for granting a special use permit within the overlay district. And lastly, I would like to say, when my clients, friends, and neighbors see the empty storefronts, I know they feel discouraged about the area. But I also know when they see an established business like mine willing to double down in my commitment to the Hubbard Woods Design District in a larger space and storefront, they will hear the message that the Hubbard Woods Design and Dine District is back in a new and improved dynamic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Just stay at the microphone for a second. Does anybody up here have any questions for Ms. Balsam?
No questions?
No questions?
That was one of the most passionate and vibrant presentations we've had in a long time, so thank you.
And thanks for all your hard work up there, too. I have to say that the last First Friday event, once the weather got great, Hubbard Woods that evening was amazing because there were people in the park, the stores were open, and we actually wandered around and wandered into several of the stores, and there were people out, the truck was serving food, and, you know, Minos is happening, there's people out there. There was such an energy, something I have never, in my 30-some years here in town, have ever felt that kind of an energy just on a casual Friday night out on the town. So whatever you guys are doing up there, we all really appreciate the effort and the thought that goes into it. And obviously the community does too, because they're starting to come out and enjoy it. So we can go ahead and have a seat then. I would like to open this up for public comment. Does anybody from the audience have a comment or question? Come on up. We'll start up here. Greer.
Ms. Balsam, thank you very much for your comments. We don't know one another, but I just feel that Hubbard Woods is so sad, and it leaves an impression of Winnetka that isn't what our community wants, okay? And when you have somebody who has so many ideas, who is preemptive to be artistic, and has new ideas that we can regenerate in our community, I hope you will take her plea and give her ability to be creative and do her thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Greer. Anybody else? Come on up. We'll just start at the front of the room and work our way back.
My name is Dorothy Bickmore, and I'm Bix Coins in Winnetka, and we've been there since 1982. When we first came, it was all antique stores. It was vibrant. People would come for lunch and they go there. Now we have to change over, and I can't think of a better thing than what Jeannie has. She's offering a fresh look. People can see that there's more activity in Hubbard Woods. And she's filling up the space that needs to be filled. And I can't think of anything better than to show that we're moving forward with our designs, and now we become more a center of your home and your living. So I think it's great.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anybody else? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Burr. I am the owner of Vivid Art Gallery in Hubbard Woods and also the chair of the Hubbard Woods Design and Dine group. I'm supporting, obviously, Jeannie Balsam's request for a special use permit. She's already described how much she has done for the district, and I enthusiastically support everything she said. She's been very generous, she's been very enthusiastic, and she's been a cheerleader for all the things that we're trying to do, which we need. The district values her, the other businesses value her. She drives her clients to our businesses, and we appreciate that about her as well. We are delighted to have her have a greater presence on the street. She's not retail, but we don't care. We would really love to have her. So I'm just speaking for the group. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Kevin Maloney. My family has owned the building at 901, 905 Green Bay Road for about 40 years. When we bought the building, it was probably the least attractive building in Hubbard Woods. And my brother changed the entire facade of the building, brought it into harmony with the Tudor design of the district. We've added a affordably priced apartment at the rear of the building above the first floor. The first floor we've changed to an artist gallery area where a number of artists share space on that first level. We've never petitioned the Cook County Assessor's Office for a reduction in our taxes over those 40 years because of a vacancy. We feel that there's been a structural change in the retail environment. The Amazon effect is very real. We have advertised the space for lease and have had literally no phone calls. We greatly want Jeannie Balsam to be our tenant. She's been with us for a number of years. She has enormous creativity and I think is a huge asset to the community. But you know, we're certainly not somebody that sees an ordinance and just ignores it and gives up. We are the furthest thing from this. This is the first time that we've ever come before the committee in support of a change because we think it's needed. I can also say that while I'm obviously biased here, I am a state certified Illinois appraiser. If there's any testimony that you need in support of any of the 9 or 10 criteria areas, I don't feel that any of them are impinged upon. I don't think it's deleterious to adjoining properties. I don't think it's injurious as far as parking. I don't think any of those criteria are prejudice in any way. And would be willing to address any of them directly. And we just, you know, further the feeling that the creativity and the vibrancy of Jeannie Balsam will be a huge positive. Right now, On our side of the street, between Tower Road and Scott, there are 4 vacancies just on the east side. They represent 30% of the total storefronts. As far as on a per square foot basis, that would probably be more significant. I did not run an entire vacancy study, but there are in the downtown area between Scott and Tower a total of 7 vacant stores. 2 of them are over 10,000 square feet or at 10,000 square feet. So one of the things that can add is, you improve by occupancy, you improve vibrancy, you improve the other stores in the area. And one of the things that Jeannie does is she brings high purchasing power people in low volume, which is a huge benefit to anybody that runs a fixture store, a wallpaper store, there is synergies here between her store, her business rather, and the existing stores in the community. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Would anybody else like to speak on this? Come on up.
Hi, my name is Sarah Dippold, and I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I was moved to say something in support of Jeannie because I just adore what she's doing, and I think it also, I wanted to make sure that I spoke out and said that I think that her moving her business to the street level helps the rest of us, even as a fellow designer doing something. We are friends, and there are more than enough clients for all of us, and I think the landlord had a good point. All those, I'm just leased 906 Green Bay for Dippold Home for retail and design business. I should have said that. And I think that the vacancy, I've been looking at spaces for the last 4 or 5 years, and that's what's held me back, that there's just not, it just feels like a dead zone. So I think that her moving down there will not only support the other businesses that her clients will support, but will also benefit the other designers and Celeste architects on our street to really help build a community of like-minded luxury lifestyle businesses. That's it.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah. Anybody else? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back up here. Any comments?
I love it.
Andy loves it.
I know that's not a surprise probably to some people. When it comes to Hubbard Woods, I love the design and dine concept. I think it's an absolutely appropriate use for that area. I agree. I'm not even going to get into the factors. I think they're met, and I don't want to diminish the significant contribution that you make to the area by just talking about the factors. I think it's an extremely positive thing. I'm excited that we've got some things coming in. I'm excited that it's entrepreneurial. I'm excited that it's organic. And I think, when we think about what we want, we always talk about vibrancy. I mean, that was the justification for retail vibrancy, bringing people in. That's what you're doing. And so I thank you for that.
I'll jump in. I just want to thank you, Jeannie, for considering staying in Winnetka, because we do have examples of people who end up leaving the community instead of sharing their success with us. So I think it's a wonderful thing that you're moving and expanding, and I'm thrilled that you're considering it.
I think she had me when she said hello. If that's a line.
He cried.
I mean, it's just the support of the local businesses, that the whole thing about the overlay district, you want to support the retail factor, and she's got support of other like designers, and she's got letters of buying products from other people. It's great to see all the people show up in positive. Normally only complainers show up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the whole design and dine thing is a great idea. So, thanks.
Jack, Bob?
I like the, I like the way it looks. I mean, it looks like a great business. I'm, of course, I'm worried about the overlay district theory of trying to keep, as Louise said at the Plan Commission, there's the idea of trying to keep more retail on the street, but I don't know, given what the landlord was saying about the Amazon economies destroying the the kind of businesses that would normally be in the retail. And he said he had advertised and got absolutely no one to look, which leads me back to a thought of I believe in the overlay district, but are the principles that underscored it in 1987 still operative now? How do we do what the overlay district wants us to do, which is to preserve the ability for people to walk into stores so that we don't get H&R blocks a landlord wants to fill his space, and if somebody walks in and says, I'm going to prepare taxes and I'll pay your rent, the landlord's going, well, okay, I've got one problem solved. But again, what do we do? Because we keep having to make exceptions to the overlay district, which starts to say, is that law effective the way that it is? So I don't know. I think the business should go in. I think she should be granted the special use district, but I guess it falls into a bigger conversation that we need is to try to determine how to effectively implement the overlay district, or perhaps see if there's, I don't think the answer's there yet. I mean, I think that retail's so in flux that we can't really come up with it. But I just say, it just always bothers me to have to make to override the overlay district because we haven't quite got the law right. So,
Well, what makes this one easy though, is that her business actually buys from other businesses.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, that was what was really neat.
That's really
Yeah.
great. So
Yep.
it may seem like it go back to an overlay district idea, but this just falls in place so easily. It makes it an easy decision.
Yeah, no, she was saying,
Right.
I send them here, I send them
Right.
there, I bring people in, so she's conscious, it
Right.
seems, the applicant is conscious of the principle of the overlay district, which is to increase foot traffic and increase business in the business district. So I thought that was really neat and good, so.
Anything, Bob? No, I just might like to add that there's a weird irony that this is being marketed as a design district, but yet design shops are not permitted by right. So that's the one that kind of has me scratching my head. I mean, it's in a big window down there. The chamber markets it this way. But the other thing that occurred to me is that, I think about some of the areas in the city of Chicago, really fringe neighborhoods that have evolved over time and have turned into something really special. The first push is always led by artists, designers, and creative types. And, that's what we're seeing in Hubbard Woods, is more and more it's attracting creative thinkers and people who deal in design and the arts. And, we can't have an old orchard on Green Bay Road anymore. It just isn't where the world is. But to be able to fill it with vibrant spaces that have synergy, I think adds the energy there and an interest for people to come and do stuff like First Fridays. And, it's a trip, an empty space is not a trip generator, where a vibrant business and an active business is a trip generator, and it brings people there who might see a shop that otherwise they wouldn't even know about because they weren't on the sidewalk out on Tower Road to begin with. I have to admit that when I saw this space, Creme de la Creme has been my go-to place for as long as I've been in Winnetka. I love the people there. Any sort of seasonal gifts, holiday gifts and the like, they've always had that special, unique stuff, and it broke my heart when I heard that they were shutting down and that the proprietor was retiring. And then you look at the space, and I always wondered to myself, oh my God, there's so much street front there. Who the heck is ever going to fill this place? Who is ever going to take the space? And I'm really happy to see that a business that's going to show some activity there has the imagination to actually take the space, fill it, and hopefully energize it as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. All right, well, let's see what we have here. First, we have an opportunity to waive introduction. So
I would move to do that.
you would move, and I have a second. That's a voice vote. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. It's a roll call vote.
Trustee Wedner.
Yes.
Trustee Kripe. Yes. Trustee Swerk.
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi.
Yes.
That motion carries, and now I'll ask for a motion to adopt ordinance number M14, 2019.
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Kreip?
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi?
Yes.
Trustee Wedner?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good job. David's in a hurry.
Just getting ready for the next one.
Oh, yeah, we got a lot of work tonight, so thank you, everybody, for your patience here. Resolution number R70, 2019, authorizing agreement with Civic Plus for website redesign. This is up for adoption. The village's website is one of the most important communication vehicles and is in need of functionality upgrades and redesign. That's an understatement. A request for proposals yielded 6 responsive proposals, and staff has identified a preferred vendor. And Assistant Village Manager Megan Pierce is here to review the website and help us with the recommendations as well. Megan?
Hi, good evening. So tonight I'll have just a brief introduction, and then we have a presentation for you related to the redesign of the village website. So just a reminder, this is our www.villageofwinnetka.org, so this is our main primary website that we're focused on. As President Rintz mentioned, the website is really a cornerstone of our communication toolkit. It's an important way for residents to learn and engage with the village. So we last contracted for a redesign in July of 2012. To date myself, that was a month before I got here, and my first task was to implement the new website. So that happened in December of 2013. So the site you see today is the site that was essentially implemented then, and our vendor has been AmericanEagle.com for that period of time. That's who the village selected in 2012. So I'm happy to be handing off the torch this time. So Josie Clark, our communications manager, has been overseeing the RFP and will oversee the implementation process as well. So we began looking pretty closely last year at a refocus and a redesign for the website. We have done some incremental projects to move it from where it was in 2013. For example, we moved it to be a completely mobile responsive website in 2016. So that was really a full update of the site, but it didn't touch the design. That also didn't deal with some of the functionality issues we're still struggling with today. I would say those are primarily search functionality, and that has always been a struggle in the existing site. We don't have the best functionality for ADA and accessibility standards, and the website is really difficult to update and keep the really prevalent information at the highest level. So in response to the RFP, we received 9 proposals, which I think is a really good number. It gave us quite a wide swath to look at. 6 of those I would consider responsive. So we got some that just did not respond to the scope of services, or costs were so out of line with what the village provided that we didn't consider those. We had a cross-departmental team of village staff that reviewed all 6 of those proposals. We selected 3 to be interviewed, and then 4 of us interviewed all 3 of those proposals. We were all in agreement at the conclusion of the interviews that Civic Plus would be the firm to best serve the village's needs. Speaking specifically about the agreement that we've negotiated with Civic Plus, a couple things I want to highlight is that there would be time built into the process for stakeholder engagement that will influence the design, and I think that's really important, that the community has something to be proud of and also a resource that they will go to. Part of the engagement will be that Civic Plus is responsible for the migration of content. They will know what content they want. We want them to move forward, and they'll also provide us training. And I think those are really critical elements of making sure that our staff feel comfortable in keeping the website up to date. So we budgeted $30,000 this year in the public affairs budget for the redesign project. As you'd see, the agreement with Civic Plus would have a 1-year cost of $29,940,555. So that is the redesign, the hosting, and the maintenance for year 1. So interestingly, website design has changed since I did the last project, and after 5 years, they offer you a redesign at no additional cost. So I think that between them having the tools and the functionality we need now, the number of governmental clients they serve, also at 5 years, we can get a fresh look and an update of the website. I think that's a really good investment piece. So Brad Burkle, who's the regional sales director from Civic Plus, is here. He's going to give a brief presentation on their tools, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Good evening. That's a tough act to follow, but I actually think it ties in very nicely to the website because what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing from your community tonight is there's a lot of really good things going on, from the music festival, First Friday events with amazing food trucks, to the Hubbard Woods Design and Dine. Those are all things that I think we want to help you celebrate and bring to life, bring the vibrancy to your community and celebrate that in the digital world. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Civic Plus, we have a suite of solutions for local government. As she mentioned, I'm the regional director, so we do have a group of products, and our flagship, our forefront, where we started was around the website. We do call that Civic Engage because our whole purpose is to create really a bi-directional communication vehicle with you and your citizens. So that's the goal of the project. What we see across all of local government, regardless of what solution we're talking about, is that citizen expectations are increasing rapidly because everything else they do, they can do on one of these. And every brand they work with, they can do on one of these. So not only do they expect everything to be digital, a recent survey, 70% of people expect to be able to do self-service from their mobile app, from their iPad, from their whatever device they have, and it needs to be intuitive and easy for them to use. So we see that across all of the different solutions we offer, obviously primarily the website. With that, this is a recent study from the ICMA group. I think it's actually Gartner and the Yankees group, but we're not saying you're going to shut the doors or turn off the phones, but the more you can push people to do online, to be able to pay bills online, to do different tasks, the better it's going to be not only for them and their experience and that citizen engagement and experience that they're feeling, but also for to help reduce cost and overhead for the community as well. And so just a little bit about Civic Plus as an organization. We are an organization based out of Manhattan, Kansas. We have over, I think it's 3,700 local governments now. We only work with local government, which I do think is a big differentiator because we really understand the needs that you all have that is different than if we were doing Billy Bob's Tires website, right? It's a very different suite of products, and there are a lot of modules, a lot of components and widgets that the team will have at their disposal to try to build that really sticky, really getting people driven to your website, having them interact with you, getting them to find what they need within a couple clicks, because Google will tell you if you can't get there within 2 to 3, they're going to pick up the phone and call you, or worse, just give up. Right, so we've designed a suite of products specifically for the website. We have over 60,000 users, like the folks on your teams that will be building content and updating pieces on the internet, as well as over 75 million people that are interacting with that content every day through our websites. With that, we do a lot of analytics. So we see over 35,000 page views every month through our systems, and that's probably actually a little bit dated. But we'll find some little tips and tricks that we see that, hey, moving the search bar to the middle is going to double the success rate of someone using that feature, right? Same things, we see jobs and employment, things that folks come to your site looking for. Oddly enough, if you have a jail, they actually really click through on that quite a bit too, which is funny, but just little tips and tricks we'll notice to try to pull out engagement that we will work with, as Megan said, throughout implementation. We have put a couple days of consulting in there so that we maybe do a survey first. We have a few days where we're going to be on site helping your team, helping the stakeholders, really make sure this isn't just something that's great for the city or that you dream up, but it's also good for all the stakeholders, the citizens, and that it's driving the right actions that you want to take from the community. So as we think about citizen engagement and we think about what we're designing and how we do it, the two kind of things we're constantly looking at are how easy is it for the citizen? Can they get there what they need to get quickly? Can they look on it from any device? Can they do things on their own? Do they have to pick up the phone? Do they have to email you to do different tasks? And does it look and feel modern? It's pretty simple. We're all users. We're all experienced in the digital world. If we go to a site and it looks like it's from 1997, we probably don't think they have anything we want to do or anything we want to offer. So that's a big part of it. How do we push ease of use for a citizen? But the yang of that is if it's not easy for your staff, if Megan and Josie can't update content easily, then the easiest way to lose people is having 4th of July last year's parade still up on the main front of your page, right? So making it simple for your staff to update, but also making it accessible for for anybody and everyone in your community, with those with disabilities. I know that's a big focus as well. We'll pride ourselves. We'll make sure when you go live, it will be completely ADA compliant. And then as you build content, there is a checker. So I know in this part of there's not as much. We're seeing a lot of lawsuits in Florida, Minnesota, different parts of the country around ADA compliance from websites and from your digital footprint. So we'll help you make sure that not just at go live, but ongoing, your site will be ADA compliant so that you can further serve, everyone in your community. Specifically for the project, as Megan mentioned, we have really our core solution, which does include over 30 different modules. Those are all focused and built for local government. We call it a one and done, but that's typically our first design. We'll have a design architect that comes with you, make sure that it fits what your community is envisioning. So we're very proud that so far, I think we have 119 as of this week, where that first design, folks signed off on and said, looks great. We won't stop until we're done, but we also are gonna build 2 out of the gate to make sure you kind of have 2 different options of what looks best. We will have on-site consulting, as well as on-site training for your staff, which I think is the right way to go. They did beat us up a little bit. We tried to pull those back to virtual based on price, but did lower the rates to try to get under your budgeted amount and earn your partnership. And then also just know, we look at every opportunity as a partnership. And so, we do have another suite of solutions. So our hope and our goal is that we're going to wow you through the website implementation. And afterwards, you're going to say, what other things can we do? What more can we do with you? So we'll be checking in throughout that and then ongoing to make sure that your satisfaction is through the roof throughout the entire process. And then just a little bit on your ongoing, I know you've been with your current vendor for quite some time. I meet with folks, anywhere on the east side of the country. And often when I meet with current customers, they say, we love your technology, but the reason we stay is because of your support and your people. So just last week, I was on site with someone with us for 12 years, and they boasted how with other software solutions that they use, they log a case and it may be days before they get a response. With us, we have a 4-hour SLA, but I think on average so far we're within 2 minutes of using the chat on our site, within a minute on phone calls, things like that. So there will always be a live person in Manhattan, Kansas to help. We're very, very proud of our support, and we look forward to partnering and supporting your organization and your community as well. We do have this is, as we've mentioned, obviously the mobile optimization, whatever device you choose will definitely be mobile responsive. This is Oak Brook in Chicago. We have probably 50 to 60 plus websites kind of in the greater Chicago, Illinois area. I'm happy to pop into a couple here and show you just a few. Another one being Skokie. And forgive me if these take a sec to load.
Once we get the website done, Megan can start working on the internet connections here in the council chambers.
You just got to sign, Tim.
Okay, so this is an example. I would love to tell you that all 3,700 websites I love. I don't always, but it is your design. So we're going to build it for you, for your community, with the colors, the themes, things like that you want. I'm not saying you don't like this one, just saying as we show some of these. But you'll notice as we start to hover, there are what we call mega menus. So again, in the spirit of citizen experience, if they know where they're going within the government, that's great, right? If they know what department, they know exactly what they're trying to do, but often they don't, right? So we suggest maybe something like a how do I? How do I pay my parking ticket? How do I do these other pieces if it wants to load? Sorry.
Will ours work better than this?
It should, yes.
The squirrel's not moving.
Not if it's in this room.
It's not responding.
When I come into this room, I turn my Wi-Fi off because it's just.
You can test the online concierge.
Well, that helps all through the on the back side. Yeah, they'd be there in a second. Let me see if I can go back here.
I never thought of peppers when I think of Skokie, though. That's
It rotates, so there'll be multiple. So you'll get multiple. But you mentioned we did mention search. It is a predictive search. So let's just say I'm thinking about my water. Just got my water bill. You'll notice on the bottom it starts to populate the different options. So as they build new content, you'll be able to tag that specifically for your site. for what kind of tags you want it to build, and it'll auto-suggest some things as well. You also will, it only searches your site, so it's not going to Google, it's only the content that you built. There will be typically a cleanup effort in that content development piece, where, you know, just because you have lots of stuff doesn't mean you want to have lots of stuff, so trying to make it condensed so that you can get to the right content quickly. But you'll see it is a predictive intelligent search that is all us, so that's not third party. We don't, you know, bring someone in for that. That's all proprietary. On the top, you do have those mega menus, which now I'm nervous to hover over, but those will start to kind of guide you to where you need to go without having to click to new page after new page. And then you'll also kind of see some of these buttons on the bottom. And these are really some of the key things we'll develop with you in that content or in that consulting piece. What are the places we're really trying to drive folks to? Where do we think people are going to land? Then throughout your partnership with us, you also have a dedicated customer success manager who their job is they'll check in at least quarterly, but once a year they'll go through the analytics of your site and say, hey, you know, you've got these 5, maybe 2 of them get like a 2% response, you know, click-through rate. Maybe we should think about moving something that's 4 pages deep to the front so that we can pull that engagement forward. So it is an ongoing partnership. As we continue to scroll down, you'll see other featured announcements. So this is all things that your team can easily build, content that you can develop, and then scroll update throughout the year. So like I mentioned, you may have a big push for the 4th of July parade or the First Fridays events, and schedule those when that content's posted and when it's taken down. Other little small widget pieces here where we can filter based on our calendar. What we want to see all the public meetings, we can see special events. You build out these tabs based on your community and what things are applicable to your group. But you'll see there's different navigations left to right, up and down. We give you lots of options. Is it something we're living here, or are we looking for things to do? We can start to look at the Hubbard Woods Design and Dine. Maybe there's a section there where we can start to see all the pictures of cool food trucks and the different things that are going on in your community and when. If I pivot back to just a couple other examples here. On this one, this is Itasca Parks District. You'll notice on the top left, this is an example of our alerts module. So this is an ability for you to communicate to say, hey, you know, it looks like in this one, when I looked yesterday, everyone had this up because all of the offices were closed, obviously. But it gives you the ability to communicate with them. We'll also show you just in a second briefly. They can also subscribe and pick which content they want to get alerted. If you update new content and it's tagged a certain way, they can get text, they can get a message, email, whichever they choose. But you'll see similar look and feels. The buttons, what the pictures are, those all change based on your organization, what you choose, what you pick it should look like, what things are on the front page. Another piece of the RFP was around being able to embed video. So this isn't, you know, I'm not a technical person, but I can easily add a YouTube video to this. It's simply adding the embed code from YouTube into your site, into the back end that they'll be able to add and modify and do things like that. So again, trying to bring in more visually rich, pull people into the things that you want to celebrate. Maybe that's a drone footage of going over the food trucks on the First Fridays, things like that. I want to show that, speaking of the drone, this is a little more advanced feature right here, right? Like we have a lot of folks are starting to get into like doing cool drone things to try to celebrate different things that are going on. This one too, you'll see the mega menu or the buttons down here flex into more options. Again, trying to pull people to where you want them to go. I think I could kind of keep showing lots of different sites, different layouts, different options. Again, here you see these are pictures. This is up in Wisconsin, but they won an award, I believe, last year on their site design. So sometimes you'll see left navigation. You have all kinds of navigation options. Again, that's completely up to you and all things that we would design and build through implementation. So I'm kind of moving quickly here with some of the sites, but open to any questions, or if there's anything I missed that I should have covered, please let me know.
Hey, we'll open it up. Any questions, guys? And
Yeah, I got
maybe
a couple questions, if you don't mind.
I just have a quick one. I've been sitting on the forestry committee, and they've just been spending so much time on their website redevelopment and their tabs and all that.
Sure.
So will all that effort and language that they've developed, could it be given to you? They don't have to start over again. I'm praying they don't, because I don't want to sit through it anymore.
Yeah, they will be a specific stakeholder group will have to engage. I think they've actually been frustrated by some of the limitations of the current site, but in terms of our ability to be responsive to them, I think we'll be in better shape. And correct, they won't have to recreate any of their content. That'll be part of the migration that's in the package.
as, I know you're doing some training as part of your whole proposal. Is there any kind of operating manual that goes along with that training so that when you have a new person on board, we're not just stuck? That's a yes. Okay.
Yeah, there's actually within the, if I were to pull up the back end, I'd be happy to show you. It's really easy to build a page, but you're like, most people aren't good there. But there is like a help section right there where it'll take them through the navigation. They can say, how do I add new content? So instead of just having a big, thick manual, it's actually kind of
Okay,
interactive.
as long as someone knows how to do that, that doesn't know the system 100%.
Sure.
Okay. Search optimization, you'll have, work on that with keywords and stuff with us, or, okay?
That's correct.
From a building department and maybe even like zoning board and all the boards, are we thinking we want the ability to like download documents to submit, or not quite that detailed yet, like permit drawings or conditional use applications? Are we not there yet? Okay, is that part of this or not yet? Okay, all right.
So we are, though, getting something that will allow us to get there when it's time. So one piece that we're very interested in with Civic Plus is the form builder. It's something that's very limited in our current site, and so there would be a way to, those are some of the tools that Brad's, in terms of facilitating people engaging with us, is there will be a lot more ability for us to create things for people to submit through the website and us to be able to track those. Rather than right now, it's basically you can send us an email.
Okay. And assuming all that existing data on the sites, like meeting minutes, old agendas and stuff, it'll all be reintegrated with the new?
So we've agreed to a more limited migration. So we've spent a lot of time actually taking old stuff off the existing site because I believe very firmly in garbage in, garbage out. So we don't want to move stuff that's outdated or we know doesn't need to be moved. So they will be moving part of it and then we may be moving another part. We thought that would save some money in terms of the implementation, that they'll take the most recent and biggest bulk of stuff, but if there's older stuff that we know is important to move forward, we'll migrate
And
that.
likewise, it falls off the end as they go forward. I mean, take stuff off, okay?
Correct, in terms of how long we want something to stay up or whether it's archived.
Thanks.
And just to show real quick, I think on the Oak Brook's an example. They mentioned to show CRT. This is citizen request tracking, so this is kind of some of the forms things we talked about. And you don't have to start here. Like all of these modules are included. You can grow into the solution, kind of getting rid of some of those paper processes. But the request tracking really is with a back-end workflow. So it's a form someone could fill out. Grass is too long, whatever complaint might be, and then that gets routed to the appropriate people within the government. And there's also forms capabilities with online payment capabilities. So you could pay a parking ticket. You could have that. You put in the number, you put in the amount, all those type of things. It's completely CPI compliant, all that stuff. But there are those capabilities that you can absolutely grow into.
And I think a good thing to mention there is that an appeal with Civic Plus is that they have a proprietary platform. So most of the proposals we received, a lot of firms are proposing building sites in WordPress and using more open source environments. And I think given the things that the village might want to do with the system and ways to grow it, things that if we wanted people to submit information, we want to be sure that that's done in a way that it's secure. And we feel that their platform would be a way to do that.
Yeah, I like the idea that they're specific to Civic, so they'd really know we're not much different than the other city, just how we want to show it, so.
Correct.
So I just want to briefly say, thank you. I'm going to be abstaining from the vote on the bid, and the reason for that, again, it's working for a large law firm, does a lot of work in the tech space. Civic Plus is actually a client of my firm. So, but I won't be abstaining, of course, from discussion about, once we're rolling the website and all of that stuff.
Okay. But it's okay for you to stay.
Yeah,
Okay.
unless someone throws something at me. I don't think
How about over on this side? Any questions, comments? Ann? I would be happy to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or other information they'd like to add for this discussion? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment, and I just wanted to add that I don't know whether you guys know this or not, but Megan has just put so much blood, sweat, and tears into this project. She has made our crappy website work for the last several years, And, I know that this is going to be something you're going to really welcome when we get to implementation. And she's just done a tremendous amount of work, not only in the solicitation of the RFPs, but also in the analysis of what we have and in the negotiating of it. And the other good news is that this particular project is within the constraints of the budget, as I understand it. So great job, Megan. I really appreciate all the hard work you've done on this. And it's something we really need, and I think it'll just be a much better interface for the community going forward. So, okay, let me move forward here. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R70, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Wedner.
Yes.
Trustee Swerk.
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi. Trustee Dearborn. Yes. That carries.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No peppers. All right, moving right along. We have a trio of ordinances here, but we'll start with ordinance number M8 2019-949, Fisher Lane Landmark Designation. The next three ordinances would designate the subject property as local landmarks. Materials have been included in the agenda packet concerning the state's property tax assessment freeze program and the implications for the village's property tax base. Also is included information on the landmark designation program. David will provide an overview of the landmark process, the assessment program, and also summarize each request before the council tonight. And I might say for those folks in the audience that are here for this, we'll probably have some policy discussion that will ensue on the first item, but I would assume that once we've resolved any policy issues, that the other two should move forward fairly quickly, right, David?
Yeah, what we're going to do this evening is we're going to combine it all into one presentation. So we'll do a summary of the designation process, talk a little about each one, then do an overview of the property tax assessment freeze, and then open it up for questions.
Right.
So Ann Clausen, our senior planner, is going to go over the landmark designation process and then each of the specific requests, and then I'll take it over from there.
Good evening. The Landmark Preservation Commission and the Village Council's evaluation of whether or not a property is designated a local landmark is based upon the historical and architectural significance of the building or property. Only property owners can initiate the designation process for their own property. Upon receipt of a nomination, the LPC evaluates the potential landmark based on the criteria established in the Village Code for general considerations of the property, the architectural significance, and historical significance. To assist in the review of nominations, a system for evaluation of landmarks is used by the Commission. This is a scoring system to determine the level of significance of the property. Local landmark designation does not take into consideration the cost of any improvements to the property or any proposed improvements. The three properties being considered for local landmark designation this evening are located in the northeast corner of the village: 949 Fisher Lane, 779 Bryant Avenue, and 1094 Fisher Crescent Lane. The owners of 779 Bryant Avenue aren't able to be here this evening, but I believe the owners of the other two properties are both here. 949 Fisher Lane, also known as the Walter T. and Catherine D. Fisher House, received a score of 89.8, which is a unique rating. Built in 1929 in the International style, the home was designed by architect Howard Taylor Fisher, the youngest brother of the owner, Walter Fisher. The LPC found the Fisher House to be one of the most unique homes in the village and an outstanding example of the international architecture. The Fisher House was found to have historical significance, most notably for its association with the original owners, Walter T. and Catherine Fisher, who both made significant contributions on the local, state, and even national levels during the 35 years they resided in the house. 779 Bryant Avenue, also known as the Albert M. and Anna B. Kales house, received a score of 86.6, which is a unique rating. Built in 1909 in the English arts and crafts style, the home was designed by architect Howard Van Dornshaw. The commission found the Kales house to be an exceptional example of a vernacular style and extremely rare since the village does not have many homes designed by Howard Van Dornshaw. The commission found the Kales house to be historically significant as well as architecturally significant due to its association with nationally recognized architect Howard Van Dornshaw. 1094 Fisher Crescent Lane, also known as the Willoughby Whaling House, received a score of 83.6, which is also a unique rating. Built in 1919 after a fire in the arts and crafts style, Robert Seyfarth designed the home for Willoughby Whaling and his wife Frederica. The LPC found the Whaling House to be significant architecturally for the quality of its materials and its design by the important Illinois architect Robert Seyfarth. Additionally, the commission found the Whaling House to be significant historically for its association with the nationally, state, and locally important original resident of the house, Willoughby Whaling. Since 1991, there have been 28 properties designated as local landmarks. 24 of those are privately owned single-family residences. Although age alone does not qualify a home, there are approximately 2,450 housing units in the village that are 50 years or older and may be potential landmarks. In terms of the number of designations in the village, 24 of the 2,450 units are locally designated landmarks, which represents 1% of the housing units.
Thanks, Ann.
So in terms of the local designation, a property owner can apply and receive the local designation. They may decide whether or not then to apply to the state for the property tax assessment freeze program. So one of the qualifications is it needs to be a certified historic structure, either on the National Register of Historic Places or receive a local landmark designation. They must also be a single-family owner-occupied home in which it's the principal residence of that individual. The applicant must demonstrate that they have undergone rehabilitation of eligible expenses that equals or is greater than 25% of the property's fair market value, and they must do that within a 2-year time period. And then lastly, any changes must meet the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation. That includes both the exterior and some of the interior elements. Again, that's the state program which the state administers. The benefit of the program is for a period of time. For the first 8 years, the assessed value of the property is frozen. And then over the next few years, the value slowly increases until in the current year, the market value is at its current market value. In terms of those properties who have applied and benefited from the program, there are 19 homes in the community that have. 12 of them, their assessment freeze period has expired. They're inactive now, and then 7 of them are active. 2 of those homes have received their second freeze under the program. After you've made the initial improvements, received the benefit, after a 4-year period, if you make a similar level of investment, you can apply for a second time or subsequent times for the program, and there are 2 properties that have done that. And then tonight, there are 3 properties that are looking for landmark designation. 2 of those properties we are aware of have made contact with the state about the program, so they have some level of interest. Those are both of the Fisher properties. This chart is in your staff report. The first column lists the 2018 fair market value of the property. The second column lists the level of investment they would need to make in the property in order to meet one of the qualifications. And then the third column is based on information we had on building permits that have been issued in the last couple of years. As Ann said, as part of our local landmark process, we don't look at what they may be doing investing in the property. We look at if the property qualifies. These values are values from building permits that have been submitted for various work. Some of that may qualify under the state program to meet the 25% number, and some of it may not. But it's just to give you an idea of what information we have on file. So in terms of the impact of the program on, we've looked at those properties that have received it in the past and currently receive the assessment freeze. We estimated the annual property tax savings to the homeowner, as well as estimated the tax impact, the potential impact on other homeowners in the village. We did 2 approaches to look at this. The first approach is the cost of qualifying rehabilitation improvements. So that was when they filed their application, what the state determined was the amount that they invested in qualifying improvements. And so then we use that as a proxy for what their increased in market value may be. So we use that number to estimate what the tax savings would be to the homeowner, an annual amount, as well as impact on other homeowners in the village, in that as the village each year levies taxes, property taxes, we set an amount we want to levy, a total dollar amount, throw out a number, 10 million, and then we work with the county to set the levy rate to collect an amount based on the assessed value we have in the community that we can collect taxes. Well, if a property owner is receiving this assessment freeze, we're trying to make some assumption of if that value is not being taxed, how is that being made up by other property owners? And so we did these 2 approaches, the cost of qualifying rehabilitation improvements, and then the second is the fair market value approach. That is, we looked at, based on records we got from the New Trier Township, what did the county have as the market value when the freeze went into effect, and then what was the market value when the freeze ended. So then that difference is what we are saying would be the savings to the property owner in terms of they wouldn't be paying property tax on that market value. So in your packet, we have 2 tables, one for the inactive properties, one for the active properties, and then the 3 that are before you this evening. The one approach, we looked at the estimated or the value of improvements, the cost of the improvements, and then the second approach, we looked at the difference in the market value from when the freeze went into effect to when it ended. And those numbers are presented in the table for each of the properties. The last thing I would mention is this state statute does allow a taxing district to opt out of the program. To do that, a taxing district during the first 30 days of the calendar year would have to adopt an ordinance to opt out of the program. It's only valid for 1 year, so the taxing entity would have to do it every year. And when you do it, it doesn't apply to any property that's already been granted the freeze. And then the other thing I would note is if the council would choose to do that for the village, it only applies to the village's portion, that each impacted taxing district would have to adopt this ordinance to opt out. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions regarding the landmark designation or the property tax assessment freeze program.
Sure. One thing I need to understand is this cost of improvements that gets you to, the way I understand it is you have to achieve this value of improvements in order to qualify for the tax credit or the tax freeze.
Correct. Qualifying improvements for the program.
So you need, but that needs to be expended before you get the freeze.
Correct.
Now, how long of a period of time must those funds be expended over? I mean, is it the
A 2-year period.
Oh, so it's just in a 2-year period?
Correct.
Okay.
The other thing I would note, when you're looking at that table, so that's just the qualifying cost of improvements. A property owner may have invested significantly more.
Mhm.
They may have built a boathouse. They may have built a detached garage. Those aren't qualifying improvements under the program, but would have added significant value that would then benefit from the property tax freeze.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I understand the state really keeps an eye on that 25%, but does the village have any say in that 25% value? Or is it basically out of our hands?
It's the state program. They evaluate it. They look at the improvements that are being made, whether they meet the Secretary of Interior's standards and whether they're qualifying improvements.
Then I got one question on your little chart you gave us today, or the updated one. The active properties, you've got a line of estimated property tax impact on other homeowners in a village, like the 507 Cedar. You have $1.84. Explain that to us, what you're trying to show us.
So you're looking at the active properties.
Correct.
Then we'll pick 507 Cedar.
Okay.
And you're down in the second group of numbers.
Yep.
Okay. So what we're looking at here is when the freeze went into effect, the value of the home market value was $497,000. When the freeze ended, the value of the home was $822,000. Then the increase in market value was $325,000. Okay, that we're assuming. We're just taking that number. In the first year, it may have been less. You know, we're talking about 12 years later what the market values are. Sure. So then we take the $325,000, then we multiply it by a factor to come out with that on that $325,000, the next row, they would have paid $8,000 in property taxes on that property, on that value, just on that value.
1 year?
In 1 year.
Okay.
And then the $1.84 is we're taking that value, dividing it amongst all the homeowners in the village to come up with an average. Some people would pay more, some people would pay less because of their assessed values, but on average, it'd be $1.84.
Got it. Okay.
Per taxpayer.
Per homeowner, per housing unit, per year.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. I really appreciate all the work that you guys did on this to put some numbers around it, and my comments don't really have to do with the individual houses that we're considering tonight. But I do think that this whole thing, even though I'm going to seem like Scrooge and a terrible, mean person, and these numbers are relatively tiny, but I think that there is a policy question that we need to confront at the village level, and that is whether or not having any increased tax burden that we're moving, and we're saying that this historical thing is worth it to burden our neighbors increasingly with greater taxes of whatever scale it is, that that is still a value in a market and an environment where we are all overtaxed in real estate. And this is a way to freeze your taxes basically for 12 to 24 years is a dramatic advantage then in selling your home because your taxes end up being so disproportionately much lower. So there's a huge value for the person who's going to go and do this, which is shouldered by neighbors and residents. And so I think we need to sit down as a community and say, is the value of these houses such that they wouldn't be restored without this tax incentive for the owner? And I look at some of these properties and, you know, maybe they wouldn't be, and would that be a tragedy? Maybe not. You know, some of these properties, you can't even see them from the road. You have to drive around and back, and it's not immediately obvious, so it's not having any impact in our daily experience of what the village is like. And so if we're taking these houses that are stuck back in the forests and saying that this is important to the character of the community, to the point that we are asking our neighbors to shoulder the tax benefit that these properties are getting, I think it's a little bit crazy. And on top of it, if like this property on Fisher, the Bauhaus or whatever that style is a very interesting property. And because of it, it has value. And so why does it need more value attributed to it because of a tax freeze? I don't know. So I think that there is a discussion to be had here. I think we're in a very high tax environment on real estate in Illinois. I think it is killing our market in Winnetka. I think there is a 12 to 16-month supply of homes on the market in our community. And I think a lot of it is because of the decision to tax ourselves. The other thing that I think is difficult from a community sort of cooperation perspective is that the village, we are the ones, as I understand it, who can make this designation, correct?
Make the local landmark designation.
Right, but Park District doesn't have that, schools doesn't have that. But all of those taxing entities are then subject to our decision about allowing this to be a tax frozen property. So they don't have to pay for schools, they don't have to pay for Park District, they don't have to pay for library, they don't have to pay for New Trier. They don't have to pay any of those. So while our portion looks, you know, stupidly small, those dollars add up as it becomes, you know, part of the other taxing bodies. Further, we're making a decision for those taxing bodies that they're going to have to more deeply tax the neighbors versus, you know, the others. So I know it's a whole, you know, yucky topic, and I'm sort of off key because, you know, I'm not sure I value the historic preservation of some of these older homes as much as others do in our community. I think there are really nice homes that are being built. And I think that homeowners have an interest in keeping their properties up and investing in them, whether or not they're historic, because they want to live in them. So, you know, I have a different take on this. I think if something can survive the sort of market test of being something that you would want to invest in and live in, then you're going to do that without a tax advantage. But when opportunistically a very small percentage of our village people end up in this, you know, it just doesn't feel right from a fairness perspective to me. So I think I would like to have a policy discussion on it. And I will not vote in favor of this tonight. I don't think my vote matters, but I just think we need a policy discussion on it.
David, could you just clarify if the freeze extends past a sale?
Yeah, we could go back to that
It does
slide.
not
Yeah.
extend past this.
Can you go back to slide that shows the 7 or 8 years, and I think you had a slide on that.
So you cannot pass it on through the sale?
Correct.
Back one more, maybe.
Yeah, so you will notice in the chart a couple of them. So if you go to the inactive chart, the last one on the right, 790 Bryant, it was sold and it ended at some period of time.
Yeah, but Ann suggested 25 years. You had a chart of it's 8 years and it can renew or something, but it goes up 25%, 50%.
This chart?
25? Yes. So how do we get to the point where you can go 25 years without an increase? You can't.
I think Trustee Wender was alluding to there are properties that have their second freeze.
But the second freeze would be after year 11, though, when it's already been increased 75%, or no?
But not 75%, 75% of what it should have been. You still have a discounted increase. Your tax rate isn't going up 75%. It's just 75% of what it should have gone. You're still getting a discount. It's just that it is being raised a little bit.
So let's say after year 8, year 9, can I reapply, or do I have to go to year 12 to reapply?
No, you have to let it go through the process.
Right,
And
so
then
a year
after that,
12.
you have to wait 4 years. You have to invest at least
Again.
25% of the then current value of the property.
I'm not sure
To
where I
qualify.
decide yet, but, so the way I look at this, after year 12, I'm paying my current market value taxes,
Correct.
okay? And then, obviously, it's almost like a little mini TIF of one residence that you're making them invest 25% that maybe otherwise wouldn't be invested, I'm not sure. But at least at year 12, you're paying market value, then you can reapply, spend 25% more, and go on 12 more years.
Correct. So
Okay.
then your new base value would become that current
Totally,
market
okay.
value. And
So it's really, I mean, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but it's almost like a little mini TIF.
So you
In a
have to
way.
wait 4 years from the end of the first one before you can apply to the second, for the second?
Correct.
So that it's not, so it would be 4 and then 12 before you reach the end of the next one. So 16 years would be the end of the second one if you applied again for the.
After the first one, correct.
And then the individual taxing bodies that Ann talked about, the school district right now can opt out of it every year also, without us, or no? Yes.
Yes, they could.
Every year they have to opt out. Every taxing body
Yep,
has their own
each
decision.
taxing district, if they want to opt out, they would have to.
No.
No, not that I'm aware.
One thing I can say with fair certainty, Ann, I will bet you that New Trier High School has a form letter that they track these things with, and because they, let's face it, they've got Wilmette too, which has a lot of historic structures. And just knowing how they pursue tax dollars and maximize their potential take, that I would bet that they're first in line to file their letters. And I'm not saying that I know for sure, but I just know the way that they responded when we spoke about the TIF. And I would probably, with some certainty, believe that they would be right there ready to contest anything that mitigates their cash flow.
So, I mean, the dollars are small for us,
Mhm.
right? It's more a principle and a values thing. And
Right.
like, how much do you care about historic preservation? And how much do you think it wouldn't happen if there weren't a tax incentive for it? Do we need a tax incentive to have historic preservation? I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's a discussion that we could have, and we,
Well, let's
you know.
have it.
Right.
So, but I don't know if it should be a study session, or if you guys want to.
And I think, pretty
roll
clear in the
tide.
past, some of my points on landmark, I'm an architect, one way or the other, I'm okay on it. It would bother me that the tax free was like, with no money invested, you get a tax freeze. But if they have to invest 25%, that's a big chunk. So basically, we're just giving them, a few years of tax abatement, or reduced, to recoup some of that money, at which time then it goes back to full market value. So I think that's a good incentive to keep an existing house that is on landmark, and Louise is here, and she'd love to hear that. And so I really, if it was a totally tax abatement, I would not be happy. But with the 25% and the process, they're going to have to pay to go through that process with an architect and a state. And I don't think those soft costs are part of that 25%. It's actual construction costs.
It's
is what I
actual
saw.
construction cost.
Right, so it's a process.
Okay, but that said, I mean, I know people who have homes that are younger than 50 years and who have spent 25% or more to update those homes, and they don't see any tax benefit, neither do they burden their neighbors with, shouldering their tax benefit. So, I mean, it's a community decision about a value, and just given what our tax rates are in this village and the expectation, I mean, I know people trying to sell their homes right now, and they're freaked out because they've seen a 30% drop in their home value. Over the last 12 years, people have seen their homes still go backwards. I'm not trying to diss Winnetka. I love it. I think it's the best community ever. But Chicago has been peculiarly, hurt in the real estate market, and we haven't made up since 1999. And so the idea that we're still, we wouldn't do this with thought, like just to keep burdening neighbors with, these nice to have in good times, but maybe because our taxes are so high, we reconsider some of these values. That's all I'm saying.
Question for David. When you do the 25% state required renovation of the house, whatever, if you put a $2 million addition to that house, that's also not taxed, right?
Correct.
Until it's over, until the 8 or 10 years, or whatever, right?
So
that would be, that kind of bugs me in a way, because then, you know, you're getting away with 8 years, but then again, it's gonna come back and kick them at year 11 and 12, so.
You know, you're right. A lot of this is your perspective, not you personally, collectively, on preservation. And I happen to value preservation. I think that we're celebrating 150 years here. There's a lot of history in Winnetka. Part of that history are the people that lived in this town, our forebears and so on. And I think a good part of that is the great architecture that we've had. And so I think it came also clear through the caucus survey, I don't have it with me, but there was sort of there is a feeling of a desire for preservation where it can be done. The village right now does not contribute really anything directly to preservation efforts. This is one that's trying to be quantified here. And so I think you're right, Ann, and it's a very de minimis amount of money. I would also point out that, and I talked to David about this, and Ann earlier, and Tim earlier today, in that the second analysis on using the assessor's market values. And David, I just want to make sure I understood our conversation on this. So what they've done here is they've taken the assessed value 8 years later, not year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but from the year 1 to year 8.
Well, to when it actually
to year
ended.
12, to year 12, right?
Yeah.
And assumed that the benefit was based on that full differential, when of course it probably wouldn't have been. You might have had an initial kick up or whatever, and then it would have kind of gradually. And so the numbers, I think, in the second analysis are sort of the worst, if you want to call it the worst case burden, if you will. And so it's somewhere in between, which, you know, I think that, you know, there is a landmark ordinance. This issue has been debated. There is a feeling amongst, I think, a good percentage of residents here that there is value to preserving some of these properties. Now, it's not 2,400 properties that qualify. It's 2,400 properties of a certain age, of certain character, of certain significance, et cetera. So you whittle it down, you can see that you only have a small handful at any one time that are going. So I think that to place too much emphasis on how this impacts people's property taxes is kind of a stretch. I think there are bigger issues that we face on a regular basis that have a bigger, you know, much more significant impact than this. And, you know, the people on the Landmark Preservation Commission, Jack, you serve on it now, I was liaison before, they spend 95% of their time doing what they hate the most, and that is seeing homes demolished. Fantastic homes in this community demolished, because we can't do anything about it. If this small effort leads to some incentive to renovate or rehabilitate a classic structure in this town, I think it maintains part of the historical fabric that we have here. And I see the significance of the dollar amounts. Believe me, I watch the dollars, but I think this is a small, you know, sort of initiative for us to support, to encourage people to consider, you know, taking structures and making a significant investment in those structures to keep them alive for the community. So I don't think we need a policy debate on it. I think we have 3 homes here that are, you know, that may or may not become part of the state program. I mean, they may or may not, you know, who knows? We know that one probably won't because they're not interested, so they say. The other 2 may or may not be accepted. I don't know, but they're great classic homes, and I think that the program is in place and we should support it.
And what I learned from today, it enlightened me how important a landmark commission is. to make sure that when it comes to the Landmark Commission, that they do the research to really make sure it's a landmark structure, that it's not just an old house that might look nice.
I think the attachments on each one of the houses.
I'm not talking about the ones with forest area, just in general, that they really have to make sure they vet them out.
Turn on your mic, Jack.
I think that if you look at the numbers, so there are 4 houses that are active now in the program, which is $1.33 that each person is picking up, or each house is picking up in the village. If the next 3 get in, it's $2.16. And I think, given the fact that that would make it for 7 houses out of 2,450 possible, shows that the program is not meaningful in terms of taxes. And people looking at Winnetka or realistically talking about their tax burden in Winnetka are not going to be thinking about this at all. What they're going to be thinking about is every time that a small house goes down and a huge house goes up, it drives up real estate taxes for all surrounding properties. And I think that the other thing that they're going to think about is every time that somebody goes and gets a tax appeal done and saves their taxes, which I'm sure everybody in the village does over and over and over again, that drives down real estate taxes. And so I think the idea of trying to save older properties by incentivizing people to follow what is basically a difficult program, given the few people who've done it over the number of years and its limited impact on the finances of the village, I think we should encourage houses to do this, because even if a lot of houses did it, it still wouldn't mean that much to us financially, but it would mean a lot in terms of the aesthetic principles of the village and what we have to look at every day. And looking at a bunch of crappy new houses that are built where a nice old house was, when I look at the new house and I go, okay, well, that's driving up my tax rate by how much? And when I'm thinking about the fact that the person who just had their taxes go up is probably in filing a tax appeal using a big downtown firm to get a nice big tax break, which I'm not necessarily going to benefit from, other than the fact that the overall cost to all the homeowners is going to go up because we're not getting that tax money from those appeals. So I don't think we should do anything to discourage people from seeking landmark status, because it really does help. The problem is it's like Trustee Dearborn was just saying, there ought to be more. I mean, in essence, there's not enough being done to save houses because we don't have the power to do that. And we haven't given, the village hasn't given government the power to encourage or save old houses. I understand, I mean, it's hospice for houses. That's what the Landmark Preservation Commission is now. You go in and there were 7 houses up for demolition 2 months ago. It's awful. And not only that, but I knew 3 of the families who'd lived there when I grew up here. And I'm going, I used to be in that house. I used to be in that house. And to me, it's a normal house. My mom's house is like that. My house is like an old house. But if either of them went on the market, they'd be gone in a minute, because we have basements from 1915, and so I can put my hand up and touch it. So this is it's a good program. It doesn't impact anybody. It really doesn't. I mean, if you look at the number of houses, 29 houses since 1991, out of the entire number of houses that were available at one time to be in this program. I think we should encourage it. I don't think it's worth a huge policy debate. I respect the idea that you don't want to burden people, but again, I think that the principle of protecting older houses and the aesthetic of that is an important thing to reach out for. We reach out a lot of different ways in government, and this is a pretty small one and a pretty effective one.
Can I just correct something, though? On a tax appeal that you mentioned, Jack, everybody has the ability to do that or not to do that.
Right.
On this, it's only a select group of people, and so there's an inherent lack of fairness in that, that there is burden being shared when you do an appeal and other people don't, but you can do an appeal. There's no one telling you that you can't. You're not eligible, right? Everybody's eligible. The other thing I think is not fair to say, I think there are some amazing new houses in this community, and I think there are some amazing new architects who have come and built. Robert A.M. Stern built a beautiful house on the lake. Keith Summerhour is a renowned architect, has built several houses in the community. I don't think that's a fair statement. And I don't want to just be, you know, someone who's living in the past. I grew up here too, and I went to lots of people's houses. And the fact that they don't exist doesn't mean that the memory of them being there doesn't exist. And I think that we can have a log and have, you know, historic knowledge about who was here. But just maintaining older houses because, you know, whatever, I don't, for me, it's not a value unless the market says it's a value. And I think the houses that are truly standing the test of time are those that people continue to invest in because they're amazing houses and people want to live in them. And I don't think that a tax program on this scale or any scale is going to incentivize them to keep those houses.
I have one last question for David. You may not even know the answer. Once the house is frozen, do the assessments still go through the normal assessment process, and does that value assessment go up every year? They see those numbers, or does no one assess it until year 9?
They have no record of what the value would have been without the freeze. Is that what you're asking?
Let's say I freeze it this year.
Right.
The
So in
next
year
3 years,
4,
do I still have assessments of my home?
it's
the
frozen
values
at
still
that
increase
level.
ideally?
Does the assessor skip the house when they come and do the triennial?
All I can tell you is in their records, they don't have a value of what it should be other than what the frozen value was from the first year.
Okay. All right. So it goes back to my addition idea. I think I'm going backwards on that. You know, it's really, again, like that TIF idea. If you get the freeze, let's say you put a multi-million-dollar addition on the home and your taxes are still frozen, well, year 9, 10, 11, and 12, we get the money back. And then some, which may have never been spent anyway. So I'm kind of in favor of the way I see it now, if it makes any sense.
You've been awful quiet, Andy.
Yeah, I was just listening.
That's my job.
It's a lot of red on this paper, a lot of red.
No, and I'm glad you raised the issue. I don't necessarily agree with your outcome on it, but I think it's always important to think about taxpayer fairness. And I've tried to do, part of the reason I've been so quiet is I've still been thinking this through. I live in an old house that probably could qualify. So maybe I'm not without a conflict on that one, and I should abstain like I have on everything else lately. But I will say a couple things. Obviously, the taxpayer fairness thing is a big concern for me. And I've given a lot of thought to the god-awful property tax system we have in the state of Illinois. And so I think that makes it all that much more important that we think about the issue and that you're thinking about. I think there's another element to the god-awful Illinois property tax situation that we always have to be cognizant of as well. And that is that stupid system having unintended consequences? And if it is, are there reasonable things we can do that won't have a significant impact to at least offset that a little bit? And when it comes to landmark preservation, I've always felt that one of the biggest problems we have in the village of Winnetka is an economic one driven by our own tax system. And here's what I mean by that. If you own a house like mine, right, corner Maple and Elm, it's a significant investment to get into it. You want to raise your family in it. And maybe you want to do some improvements to it. But you know what's going to happen if you do that. You are going to get whacked on your property tax bill. So what do? What does a reasonable, ordinary person in my shoes do? What we do is we sit on it, we endure it, we pay to replace the air conditioning system when we have to, but ultimately we're planning to escape. And so our tax system has created an unintended consequence where we create a flee kind of mentality, not an invest in your community and stay. And when I think about this program, what it does in essence for a very minimal impact on other taxpayers, I mean like $1 or $2, maybe a little bit more in some cases, but for a very minimal impact is, it says to a homeowner, if you make that investment in your community, if you decide to stay, right, if you don't plan on packing it up to Florida and moving into the next thing, we're going to give you time to figure this out. You know, your income is going to ramp up during that 8-year period, especially for younger people, and that's certainly a calculus in my household. If in 8 years I think my income is going to be here, then you know what? I'll be ready for that increase. So it's a reasonable incentive that doesn't come at a significant cost. And now here's the positive, because I'm also mindful that I would never want to create a subsidy for rich people who have old things, okay? Because that's a legitimate fear, and that's kind of, I think, what you've laid out as a fear. There's an exchange, though. So you create that reasonable kind of, hey, here's how we're going to offset the stupid tax system we have, okay, so you can plan for it. The net effect is, at the end of that 8 years, instead of me packing the moving van and rolling out and just selling it to the next person, there is already a property that is going to get taxed at a higher level. The taxpayers actually come out ahead. Maybe a new developer would come in, tear it down and put up, and I'm, by the way, not a anti-new house. I happen to like old houses, but to be honest with you, I think there are a lot of beautiful new houses. So I actually don't cry every time I see a beautiful old house go down, because that's life, you know? If we were so committed to every old building, we'd be living in Roman buildings, you know? And so, you know, it's a fair exchange. It's not a subsidy for rich people with old things. I think it's a fair exchange. I think the impact is de minimis. And then the last thing I thought about, because I've lived here for a while, and I know this preservation issue is like a thorny one. You know, another thing that I hold dear is the right of people to, you know, use their biggest investment in the way they see fit. And I think that's like prevailing notion in this town. People do not want restraints on what they do with their house. They don't want you telling them, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. We are not Lake Forest. Winnetka will never be Lake Forest. This is a very Winnetka compromise to try to, you know, offset this kind of weird economic thing that we have that is better, in my opinion, much better than if we just said we're not going to do anything to preserve these old houses or to address this screwed up dynamic. And then all of a sudden we're going to have people lobbying to like dictate what color paint and, you know, all that other crazy stuff that you have to do in places like Lake Forest they're beautiful. I'll never move there. I would lose my mind. I like visiting there. I like going there for lunch, but I can't live that way. I want to live the Winnetka way. So I think it's a reasonable compromise. I think it has a de minimis impact. I don't think it's a subsidy for rich people with old things. And I think those houses are really cool, so I'd like to see them, you know, approved. And, you know, the track record, too, I think shows that, you know, we're not dealing with a lot.
Any rebuttal there, Ann?
Yeah, Andy, of course, you know, you're unbelievably reasonable. So, you know, it's hard to, but I think philosophically, since it's not going to matter since all you guys agree anyway, I'm just going to vote against it so I feel better about it.
Good.
Because there is the idea of the impact on our neighbors and, you know, and I do think it is a subsidy for rich people and, you know, I'm tired of it. Like, let's give the money to some inner city people, like instead of, you know, rich people in Winnetka. So, you know, for that reason, I'm going to stick to my guns, but it looks like it's going to pass anyway. So I did want to bring it up, and I appreciate that everyone humored me. I really appreciate the work that Tim and David did on this. I mean, I feel a lot better just going into it with eyes wide open, so you guys could all tell me how de minimis it is, because if we hadn't had that work done, then no one would know.
Right.
So I think that work needed to be done. I'm glad I asked the questions, and I appreciate the conversation. And Andy, of course, you're always right.
And maybe with all the tax savings, they will give some money to some different charity and make it a plus. I mean, it may happen that way. We'll see. Okay.
Well, it's an interesting conversation, and Ann, I don't think anybody had to endure. I think, you know, look, we all come here with different ideas and different thoughts, and that's how good councils work, is we can sit up here and talk about these things, and sometimes we agree to disagree, but that's okay too. So I was wondering if any of the applicants or anybody else in the audience would like to speak to this. Come on up, Louise.
Louise Holland, 545 Oak. I am a 50-year resident of Winnetka. My home is a landmark, a local landmark. My home is on the National Register of Historic Places. It is not in a forest. It is at the corner of Poplar and Oak in a very prominent place. We deal with a lot of traffic on Oak Street, especially now with the bridges being repaired. Before I say what I drafted, I'd like to say that you cannot be part of the state program unless you are either a local landmark or on the National Register of Historic Places. A local landmark doesn't cost any dollars to a resident. The National Register is probably in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $12,000 of consultants' work, because it's not easy to get on the National Register, as well as it's not as easy to get this tax freeze, assessment freeze. There are people in Springfield that go over these numbers and the homes and come and visit and look and want examples and spend hours and hours of time making sure that whatever the owner is doing is in fact saving a historic home. On the Landmark Commission, we spend hours and hours going over these requests for landmarking. We don't just give out this landmark designation from the commission willy-nilly. You have to have proof, you have to have a lot of proof that this home really is a structure that adds to the ambiance of Winnetka and to the history of Winnetka. So I believe with all my heart and all the 50 years that I have lived here that we would not have a Lloyd house, it would have been gone. The owner could not remodel it without this tax freeze. We're a very lucky community. We have two national landmark structures in Winnetka. One is Crow Island School, and one is the Henry Demarest Lloyd House. We're a little town. To have two national landmarks is very unusual. You cannot touch them. They cannot be torn down. So I believe in historic preservation. Now I'll tell you what I wrote, because I've spent a lot of years on the Landmark Commission. Maybe too many, but on your agenda this evening is a request for designation of landmark status for 3 Winnetka residences. These are the first requests since 2012. All are historic homes that contribute greatly to the ambiance of the village of Winnetka. The ordinance that created the LPC in 1991 does not allow our members to solicit residents to apply for landmark status. What the ordinance does allow and encourages is the LPC to educate and inform our community as to the importance of honoring qualifying structures, both residential and commercial, with this award. Our landmark trolley tours are held every spring. We welcome over 60 riders. This year, 120 riders, to emphasize the very diverse architecture and history of landmark homes. I would like to thank the members of the LPC who have studied the historic value of homes when asked by property owners. For 7 years, we have hoped that a request would appear. Tonight, 3 homeowners who value their historic residences with pride are asking for inclusion on the Winnetka landmark listing. A vote of thanks goes to Nan Greeno, who was the first chair of the LPC almost 30 years ago. She served with many years with distinction and has spent hours lecturing on the trolley tours with grace and humor. The 150th sesquicentennial of our village allowed for the printing of the landmark brochure that you have received. We will provide an addition to the brochure, including the 3 landmarks that you will hopefully introduce this evening. The Landmark Preservation Commission will continue all efforts to educate our community as to Winnetka's historic architectural abundance. And I would like to say that we have seen a change in the community. We have had periodic groups of residents that have come and said, don't tear down this house. Had we only known that it was for sale, we would have bought the home. There's a change. Things ebb and flow. And I think a change is coming to our village. And I think these 3 residences are more than qualified to be local landmarks. They deserve the award. So thank you. And by the way, I am not asking for a freeze on my home.
Thanks, Nan. Would anybody else like to address council on this issue? Seeing none, I will close public comment. And I'll bring it back up here. Any parting thoughts? We move to, I think we'll just roll down the list here. I will say this. One thing that Louise stated, I will definitely verify. At one point in time, I had the opportunity to own a fairly substantial and important Howard Van Doren Shaw home up in Lake Bluff. And, you know, it was our desire as we were developing the property at the time to landmark that and receive all the credits and everything necessary to bring it about. And the fact that we had this 20,000 square foot house, which was really important, and this particular property was the proving grounds for what he ultimately brought forth in Market Square and Lake Forest. So it had a lot of, you know, historic significance to it. But it was a 20,000 square foot house. And so we wanted to divide it into smaller units so that a number of residents could enjoy it, and, you know, condominium sort of a thing, in addition to developing the rest of the property. And I have to tell you that the scrutiny that we went under down at the state level with their review boards made it impossible for us to do that. And the bad news is ultimately I lost the property and somebody else bought it, and their designs were to tear it down. And at this point in time, that's what's going to happen. It sounds like certainly the coach house, which is really significant, sounds like that's looking for the wrecking ball, and the main house probably will follow suit. So it's hard to get this done, and even when an important building is up against it, the state still has very stringent requirements to get this done. And it surprised me because it's the state of Illinois, right? And so you expect that everything just kind of is done in a half-assed manner. But in this particular case, I have to say that the people that are involved in the review committees down there are passionate and attentive and pay close attention to how these things are being applied. So I don't know if that's any solace for you, Ann, but it's not so easy. That much I will say from personal experience. So, all right, with that said, let's see if we can get this out of the way here. So I'm going with, you didn't give me addresses here. Oh, yeah, you did. First one would be M8 2019, which is 949 Fisher Lane. May I have an ordinance? May I have a motion? It's getting late. Anytime after 9 o'clock, I'm shot. So may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number M8 2019?
Before we do that, do we have to hear anything about each one of these, or
We already did that.
Okay, okay.
So moved.
All right. Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ordinance number M9 2019, 779 Bryant Avenue. May I have a motion to introduce ordinance number M9 2019?
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And last but not least, ordinance number M13 2019, 1094 Fisher Crescent Lane. May I have a motion to introduce ordinance number M13 2019?
So moved. Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So I have a sneaking suspicion these won't be on consent agenda the next time around. Which meeting you missing, Ann? That's okay. It's definitely worth the conversation. So thank you all for submitting, and we really appreciate your dedication to preserving the architectural heritage of the community. Thank you very much. Moving forward, old business, we have none. New business, we have none. Appointments, we have none. I'm working on some, and I promise the next time around we'll have a few. Closed session, there is none. And adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.